Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is DB333 and welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order Last Days of Europe as we Greater German Reich. Now in the last video, oh boy, shit got intense. We were able to negotiate fairly peacefully with the Yanks over here about releasing their pilot back to them. And of course, we ended up sending them back. We got some pictures in return, but that's not the only thing. Over in Frankfurt, a bunch of slaves decided to revolt, and as a result, we have a big diplomatic incident. We have a situation, a domestic situation we have to deal with. We just gave permission to our Foreign Minister Helmut Schmidt to take a look at it, and we'll just hope that it works out well. We're also just about to take over all the assets of Siemens, which is nice. No more Siemens, which I personally am a fan of. Getting rid of a Siemens, I should say. I gotta be careful how I say that. I want to hold out on cutting the political power. Is there anything we can do that'll not give us a hit? Actually, this will. Let's do the revival of Mittelstand. The bedrock of the old Imperial German economy was the Mittelstand, small to medium-sized businesses that competed with each other in a healthy, liberal economic environment. Reliance on these businesses kept the middle class happy, the working class employed, and the upper class in check. More importantly, it prevented monopolization of the economy, which is precisely the situation we have been trying to undo for 3 decades now. Working class people got a strong boost from our blue-collar training programs, and now it's the turn of the entrepreneurs and small business owners to receive our patronage. Tax breaks and cheap loans from the Reich Bank will help to keep failing businesses alive and kickstart new ones. This will enrich the middle class, which will in turn enrich us, as they represent the most profitable tax bracket of the population, of course. Yeah, it doesn't matter what we do with France, because we'll get them back under our control. We are doing great with the great game. I only had to fuck around with 2 of the games to get it our way. The room, which had been almost bursting with sound, went dead silent. Spiedel's eyes shot to Speer in disbelief. Schmidt's eyes widened, and the rest of the gang's attention quickly shot to the phone. The moment of silence would not last for long. The telephone on the desk, which everyone had almost forgotten in the chaos, quickly grabbed everyone's attention with a screech of static. Schorner's voice, now almost as loud as if it had been in the room, exploded from the speaker so ferociously that the phone nearly rattled off the table. "My Fuhrer, you can't be serious! Are you truly suggesting that we not only put down a rebellion, but negotiate with them? They're slaves! If we negotiate, we'll give in to decadent, lesser races. We give in to those we own. Do you honestly think that the other slaves will look at us, give in to a slave revolt, and not get the idea to do the same?" Schorner, I've thought this through, and this is the obvious solution if our agenda is to be followed and believed. Besides, your solution is less of a fix and more of a massacre, Speer flatly replied. The look of his face clearly betrayed the opinion on the field marshal to the other men in the room. "My solution may not be weak enough for you bleeding hearts, but it will work. I cannot in any way support such a foolish, naive choice." "Well, Herr Schorner, I'll take your complaints into consideration." Speer spat as blandly as possible before unceremoniously placing the phone back in the receiver. Almost immediately, he was beset upon by Schmidt, who spent the better part of the next 5 minutes praising Speer's choice before rushing from the room, quickly being followed by the gang. Speidel stuck along a bit longer to give his thoughts, mostly cautionary words about excessive looseness to revolters, though Speer could tell he was holding back some of his more choice words. Finally, when everyone was gone, Speer leaned back into his seat and stared out the window. He couldn't help but think of the fiery speeches against him that were sure to come from all sectors. It was certainly going to hurt him with a here in the Conservatives. Indeed, he almost regretted his choice for the amount of problems it would open up. At the end of the day, though, at least he knew it was the moral one. Schmidt can get it done. So we'll get the negotiator event. As well as some bonus to the authoritarian Democrat path. The wing of the party. Revival of the Mittelstadt. Let's go ahead and what should we do? Let's go and sideline the mega corporations. The best way to weaken the mega. Actually, I'm thinking we should start working on the Council of Gods and the Conglomerate of Steel. Just get working on that. Start the repatriation efforts. Yeah. Let's start with Farben. IG Farben, one of the world's largest conglomerates, is a blight on Europe comparable only to the Nazi Party. They were with the Hitlerites from the beginning, missing no opportunity to profit from the late Führer's cruel barbaric ideology. Presiding over it from the shadows was Hermann Josef Abs, a true wolf in sheep's clothing, if there ever was one. To the party, he is an untouchable god. The corporate world, a model executive. To us, the greatest threat we face after Field Marshal Schorner. We must break Ab's power, politically and financially. Too long have his crimes gone unaccounted for, and his sway over Germany unchallenged. As the world's most powerful banker, he has virtually unlimited resources at his disposal, so we cannot hope to destroy him by purely financial means. We must instead employ more direct means. To slay the beast, we shall bleed it out before going straight for the heart. Abs will regret the day he sold his soul in pursuit of wealth. Now that I like to hear. Alright, let's do the meeting with Erhard first. So, Erhard, Speer ground his teeth and forced himself to smile. It's been some time since we last talked about policy, hasn't it? I assume this conversation will be just as bracing. Without a word, Erhard stowed his cigar between his teeth, reached down to his briefcase, and hauled up a textbook-sized folder, presumably stuffed to the brim with proposals, spreadsheets, and assorted financial documents. Speer continued smiling, but the light of false enthusiasm winked out of his eyes. "Oh!" he murmured. "I'm sure Kissinger has already given you the abridged version." "My Führer," Erhard began, "simply put, we need the Mittelstand backed. Small and medium-sized businesses was the bedrock of the German economy right up until Hitler started handing out government contracts to the party's biggest donors. We all know how that turned out. We've put a lot of effort into building a middle class that'll be crucial to our new policies. We have to rely on the established corporations as little as possible from now on. Don't issue them new contracts, don't engage with them, don't indulge their requests." Speer paused for a moment. He examined Erhard, blinking against the fragrant smoke drifting between them. He swallowed. "But what if—" "No room for buts, my Führer. You know the stakes of the game. Ab and his lackeys won't compromise. Our plans are directly opposed to theirs, and they know it." Speer sighed. No chance to get a word in edgewise with Erhard. "We'll have to deal with them directly at some point, Erhard." "Yeah, I know. I've scheduled a meeting for next week. You, me, and the four leading industrials of the Reich. It'll be a moment of truth, my Führer. Don't be afraid to lay down the law and put those scum in their place." "Don't I have a say in this?" "What are they doing?" Jan held his binoculars tightly to his face. Next time, Mikiata watched as well as he could, though the action was currently happening down the streets. "I have no idea. There's a man in a suit. He's talking to the army right now. They're setting up speakers?" Jan looked over to Miak in near disbelief. Are they negotiating? You can't be serious." Miyaka responded, a similar look in his eyes. "The Germans negotiating with slaves? Untermensch?" "It didn't happen. Besides, why would they?" Miyaka and Jan would never say it aloud, but they knew that if the Germans really wanted to, they could steamroll any resistance the slaves could put up. "Why would they negotiate?" You must be seeing things. Give me the binoculars. Miyaka snatched the binoculars from Jan's hand, pressing them to his own face. True enough, he watched as the man in the suit argued with a flustered officer. After a few moments, the man in the suit grabbed a microphone and began to stride forwards, a stately voice from behind the speakers, engulfing the factory. "Good afternoon," the voice boomed. "My name is Helmut Schmidt, Minister of Foreign Affairs and lead diplomat of the Reich. I have come to discuss terms of surrender so that none may die on this day. With your cooperation, we can come to terms. Without it, the end result of this affair would be more bloody than either you or I want it to be. If you wish to cooperate, send a sign." With that, the men retreated back to the police cordon. Jan and Mikata looked at each other again. A mix of disbelief, joy, and relief permeated through each of them. Perhaps they could succeed after all. Incredible. Whew. This is getting good. It's getting very suspenseful. What is Burgundy up to? Unknown focus. Their stability is garbage. But I don't think they need that. Good stability. I'm telling you, Schmidt, they can't accept that. We want to be free. There's not a compromise between freedom and slavery. Helmut Schmidt leaned back in his chair, resting the bridge of his nose between his fingers. "What I must tell you is that I'm working with limited time and space here. You don't know how hard I needed to work to even get this chance. To release you after a violent uprising? No, it will never be allowed. I need you to work with me here." "Then perhaps I will remind you, Herr Schmidt, that we still hold numerous hostages." There was a silence for a moment as both parties regarded each other. Though neither side could read the other's mind, both knew that they couldn't afford for the negotiations to fall through. For Schmidt, it could spell the end of his reputation. For slaves, it could spell the end of their lives. There had to be a compromise somewhere. A bolt of inspiration struck Schmidt, and he took his chance. "Look, I can't release everyone, but perhaps I can hit a middle ground. My proposal: you and the rest of your leaders surrender, and we try you for fairly. The rest of the slaves are freed, along with the hostages. If you take the deal, I promise, none of you will ever see a slave factory from the inside again." The slaves looked at each other. Schmidt attempted to hide his distress. Were they sharing looks of joy, agreement, distaste? He needed a result soon. No doubt that Speer was getting antsy at how long it was taking to strike a deal. The two men on the other side of the table looked back to Schmidt. "Schmidt, if what you say is true, we would be happy to accept imprisonment if our comrades go free. I'm sure the other leaders would feel the same." The prisoners couldn't see it, but the tension of the last days evaporated from Schmidt's body as he rose to shake their hands. A miracle. This is happy. I love getting happy endings. Alright. Click for further action. Come on. Don't crash. Oh. Okay, antitrust directives. There we go. We can go ahead and dismantle Siemens. 1 down, 3 to go. Alright. Schmidt and the gang entered the room all smiles, Schmidt himself carrying a healthy number of papers. Speidel passively watched as Schmidt carefully set them in front of Speer and began to look through them. Midway through the first one, he stopped, looking back up to Schmidt. "Schmidt, I prefer not to be looking through these all day. Is it possible for you to give me a summary?" Schmidt smiled. "Of course, my Führer. I flew to Frankfurt and engaged in dialogue with the slave leaders. Over the course of the next days, we spoke to one another at the negotiating table, concluding an agreement where, in exchange for the freedom of the hostages and the surrender of all arms, the leaders and the factory would let the slaves go free." "Hold on," Speer interrupted. "You let all the slaves go free? As in, all of them?" Schmidt paused for a moment. "Yeah, my Führer. It was the only way to a successful deal." Speer sighed. "Oh, Jesus Christ. The hair is going to fucking shred me, Schmidt! Do you understand? The conservatives, the militarists, the businesses, they're going to fucking shred me." I fear it was the only way. He attempted to continue, but this was again interrupted, this time by Speidel. May I interrupt, my Führer? He continued before he got an answer. While the intentions of Herr Schmidt are certainly in the right place, I fear that we might see a slave revolt among the slave populace when they learn of our softness on this issue. We need to stay on guard, perhaps raise security on major factories. Now Schmidt was the one interrupting. For God's sake, Speidel. You are still going on about this? Your solution would have killed 100 people, probably more. Sure, there could be some unrest. Does it truly matter if you save lives? I'm not saying it was the worst choice. There was certainly worse solutions proposed. All I'm saying is that we need to be on guard. Schmidt threw his hands up in the air. My fear, all the details are in the folders. I'm sure you can find them for yourself. With that, Schmidt departed, with both the gang and Speidel following shortly. All that remains in the room were Speer, his thoughts, and the mountain of papers on his desk. Get damage control ready. Letters from the Reich is coming up next. Ernst von Siemens entered the top office in the Reichswirtschaft Ministerium, a neutral expression on his face. He knew, of course, the reason for his summons. He was not a fool. While a part of him secretly hoped for this moment to come, another part of him, the cold, calculative part that any serious entrepreneur needs in order to survive, couldn't help feeling dejected. Reichsminister came Gellenberg's polite, if a bit cold salute. Wirtschaftsführer was Ludwig Erhard's equally polite, but perhaps a bit less cold answer. Von Siemens exhaled, then looked in the minister's eyes. There's no need for formalities, Herr Erhard. It doesn't take a genius to know why I have been called here. A clean cut is better than a game of cat and mouse. Ludwig nodded. Unlike all others, der Wirtschaftsführer von Siemens had been a steadfast, if interested, ally in his reforms. Together they worked to reduce the need for slaves in the other conglomerates, and the entrepreneur had used his influence to protect the minister from economic backlash on the other company's part. Still, free market didn't admit exceptions, and they both knew that. In light of the new economic policy, Siemens is to be stripped of its privileges and will, from now on, operate as a normal company in a free market. When von Siemens looked at him in surprise, Erhard chuckled. You must have come here expecting dismantlement, didn't you? It's almost a pity Siemens is too tightly knit to be broken down, and not big enough to pose a threat to fair competition. Consider yourself lucky. Ernst von Siemens felt once again the two parts of his mind agitating. One was believed that the blow had proven much lighter than expected, while the other was already lamenting losses. Still, he decided to listen to the first, if only this once. Danke, Reichsminister, he said, for then excusing himself. The two shook hands, then the office returned silent. A bittersweet moment, indeed. Let's look at the Reich stability. How are we doing right now? Oh, wonderfully. We are so fucking stable right now. It is not even funny. Let's take a look at the GUI again. You can get back to working against... Ooh. Wunderbar. Oh. Damn, we're just places that are popping up with no slaves all of a sudden. It's a bit strange. I'm not complaining, but it's a bit strange. Ukraine is going to be more or less freed in a few days. And there goes Siberia. We'll see how that goes with their... now it's time for our favorite segment, Mail Time with Shepard. Letters from the Reich. To our great Führer, Albert Speer. My Führer, we of the Friedrich Wilhelms University Club for Albert Speer in specific, and the United Universities Club for Albert Speer in general, cannot commend your actions regarding the slave rebellion in Frankfurt higher. Indeed, there was some concern that you would go back on your word regarding the freedom of all slaves when the news was first passed to us. The news came through that not only had you sent Helmut Schmidt to negotiate with slaves, but had succeeded in your goals. I can only describe the mood as ecstatic. Indeed, we can certify that in Germania, we held an impromptu rally in your favor that was attended by at least 1,000 fellow students. Such rallies were also reported to us by our other chains across Germany. We're so thankful to have a leader who truly is backing up his promises, and we are certain that this chain of action will continue. Know that no matter what forces try to stop you, we will always be behind your rule. Sincerely, Rudolf Wagner, head of the United University Clubs for Albert Speer. To the Führer, Albert Speer. One cannot help but look at your recent choices to negotiate with the slaves, the bottom tier of German society, with disdain and fear. We here worry greatly about this recent course of actions. Is it not true that we Aryans are superior to our slaves? If we treat our slaves like Aryans, then what will the meaning and power of the word even become? Suffice it to say that many of us in the here are more than a little displeased with this recent change in action. Such foolish measures as negotiating with slaves will only lead to trouble and Western corruption in the future, and the notion that this Western corruption may be infiltrating even the highest levels of our government is very worrisome for those who love our Reich and what we have built it upon. I can only implore you to change course immediately, before the nation which we all love falls to Bolshevism and decadence. Sincerely, Oberst Hahn Meyer, Commander of the 2nd Regiment, 36th Division. At least it's mixed. Let's go ahead. Can we do another antitrust directive, perhaps? There we go. No cartels. IG Farben has fallen apart. France sided with Germany, of course. They'd be fools not to. I told you if it happened, I fear, and it has. Read the reports for yourself. Speidel dropped a folder, filled it with papers, directly onto Speer's desk. Speer took one look at it, and already knowing the contents, sighed deeply. Schmidt watched on, repressing his own anger at Speidel's continued resistance. Hamburg, 2 dead. 2 gods dead, 6 slaves dead, a dozen wounded. Danzig, 4 gods dead, 6 slaves dead, another dozen wounded. München, 14 gods dead, 25 slaves dead, dozens wounded. So the list goes on and on, my Führer. Speidel spoke with the certainty of a man who had memorized these reports. Speer placed his head in his hands as Speidel continued. It seems clear to me and many of us that this was a poor course of action to take, and now we are going to see the results. Schmidt cut in. Herr Speidel, when will you stop going on about the damn decision? I think it was a net positive. Of course you do. You came up with it. Speidel spat. He turned to face Schmidt, who seemed to grow angry by the second. And you say it isn't because we turned your proposal down! Schmidt pointed at Speidel, who remained unmoved. You've avoided a disaster by negotiating. Can you imagine the international response to us gunning down slaves? What about the students and reformers? Do you think they'd agree that with running people over with tanks and cars? Now it was Speidel's turn to get angry. Herr Schmidt, it is your choice, not mine, that has led us into this mess. We would never see slave unrest to this scale if he had not enticed him to do so. Enough! Shouted Speer, his head snapping back up. What's done is done. There's no use arguing the damn point. If I have one more argument about what we could have or should have done, I'm throwing both of you out of my office. There was silence for a moment. Both Speidel and Schmidt were caught off guard by Speer's outbursts, when he was usually the one to remain calm in these scenarios. Finally, both men exited the office, leaving Speer alone to ponder what could have been, and what his actions would mean for Germany. What's done is done indeed. So we get some pee-pee. Our regime stab falls a little bit, but that's not the worst. Let's be real. The Council of Gods. It's going to be dealt with soon enough. Let's take a look at Lithuania. Start working on that a bit. Hermann Josef Abs is not a man. He is a force. With his throne built on the backs of German victory, industrial technology, and the piles upon piles of slaves, he rests on the profits of many complaints. But there is one in particular that stands out. A company that serves as a true testament to Ab's profit-driven motives and the cost that comes with it. IG Farben is a chemical and pharmaceutical conglomerate. On the surface level, it is nothing more than a megacorporation pulling its strings across all of the Reich, its colonies, and further abroad than that. Under the helm of Hermann Josef Abs, has risen to become one of the most powerful actors within the government, not only having wide-scale influence in large parts of the Unity Pact, but fielding their own private mercenary company, as well as a heavy, if not total, reliance on brutal slave labor. Having reaped the rewards of a victorious Reich, Abs has certified his reputation of what is to be successful as a German. Out and active, he's crafted a carefully made image of an apolitical yet loyal businessman serving the interests of the Reich. Yet under the guise of an honorable and capable man lies a bloody history driven by a single desire. Hermann Josef Abs, under the wraps, is an incredibly cunning and ruthless man. It can be safely claimed that his economic empire stretches from sea to shining sea, and that his business acumen remains one of the most unrivaled in the whole world. His reach extends to every continent, even Antarctica, apparently. And IG Farben only remains to be one of the many companies under his repertoire, with many more scattered around the world. In the homeland, however, is where Abs makes his capital. Something can be clearly said about IG Farben and its shadowy ruler. It is a threat not only politically and economically, but morally as well. It stands as a testament of success to relying on slave labor, an idea unworkable in the long run. Yet here it stood as a shining jewel in a pile of riches. If Erhard is to collapse this rotten structure from the inside out, all of his genius would be for naught, if not firstly invested in the largest threat that stands before him, a titan which will force Germany to bend under a system that cannot hold forever. Hermann Josef Abs is a force, and one that must be stopped. What do we want to get working on? Let's point out how he's an enemy to freedom. To hell with caution. No plan ever survives contact with the enemy, as Hirschbeidel would say. IG Farben is an enemy of freedom, and therefore an enemy of the state, the people, and, helpfully, the Führer. If they want war, they'll damn well get it. And what better way to make war upon a corporation than to deprive it of a workforce? IG Farben is wholly dependent on its millions of slaves to continue turning a profit. The executives have been digging their heels ever since the beginning of the Restructuring program, doing all they can to forestall the inevitable release of their victims, but their schemes and litigation are no match for the might of our apparatus of state. All means at our disposal shall be directed towards the destruction of the corporation and slave network, a crude, imperfect solution, but supremely satisfying. Indeed. So downward bends, have some power in the south of Germany, Lithuania. Let's start making little digs here. And we can't do any digs there, but it was worth a shot to at least start. Our good friend Henning von Treschow loathes slavery almost as much as he does National Socialism itself. Despite his bluster and slightly esoteric Prussianism, he is a man pure of heart and true to his Christian beliefs, including a hatred of all injustice. He has a crucial role to play in the coming struggle, and it's time to bring him on board. Von Treschow understands the importance of sending a strong, clear message. The demise of IG Farben and its final masters will be ours. To the Reich, to the other corporations, and to the world. They made slavery what it is today, and driving a knife into the heart of their corrupt enterprise will prove once and for all that there will be no mercy offered to the wicked in our new order. Hey, isn't that the name of the mod? New order, huh? Nudge, nudge. Oh, this is going great. Sitting in the Wehrmacht. Speaking of Wehrmacht... Oh. Richard Abel felt a pang of nervousness when he climbed up that podium, and the rifle that was on his back felt heavier than usual. He hadn't done one of these speeches in a while, though he felt the basics return to him quickly as he approached the center. Taking a deep breath, Abel assumed a stern position, and the cold gaze of his eyes was felt by the 100-something men that clad in urban camouflage, standing shoulder to shoulder, with the aura of their discipline almost matching their twisted brethren in the order state. You've all been called in today by the Reich, he shouted, feeling just a hint of nausea in the last word. You have been specifically picked out for this operation. Your skill as a soldier, operative, and your expertise in handling extreme pressure. There was a ringing silence whenever he paused, but he opted to ignore it. Tomorrow night, we will be launching an operation to seize an IG Farben slave factory. The factory in question will have paid mercenaries guarding them, and intelligence suggests that there's even more an APC in their ranks. This matters not for us. We are soldiers of the Reich. The objective is simple. The facility will be struck swiftly. It's your job to sneak into, outflank, and demoralize the mercenaries into giving up without a single shot fired. Remember, they are paid to scare the slaves into submission. When they see the full power of the Reich, they are almost guaranteed to lay down their weapons before their lives. So make every move count, show them mercy, but let them know what it means to be afraid. With a stiff throw of the arm, Abel let out a cry. The rest followed shortly after. Heil Speer. Speer nodded approvingly as he downed the final page of the proposal. A nice fat dosing of education and healthcare, enough to make the Reich look like one of the most progressive nations on Earth, was sure to go well with anyone who would have. Does that mean that we're done with, what should we call it? Yeah, it does. We're done with the, Oh, I thought we were done with that. Never mind. Well, Herr Kissinger, he said with a smile, this is more like it. It's nice to have a proposal that won't anger at least half of the Reichstag come to my desk. Kissinger chuckled warmly. I'm sure, my Führer. Herr can be quite an overbearing man at times, can't he? Now, Speer began, stapling his fingers. It'll be quite expensive, won't it? Not that I'm opposed to it, just considering the whole picture. Yes, my Führer, it will cost a fair amount. I'm sure it won't be difficult to sell to the Reichstag, though. Many of our new representatives are populous at heart, and once information about it, this becomes public, they'll be under immense pressure to accept it. The Führer took a moment to stew it over. The Reich's children certainly need investment in the future, and if the money was available to give citizens a better quality health care, why not do it? With the military cuts and a rationalized taxation system, there really wasn't much of an argument against it. The money would be just sitting around, gathering dust otherwise, waiting for some greedy bureaucrat to start picking away at it. Very good, Party Chancellor, Speer finally said. A quick scratch of his pen, and the proposal bore the official signature of the Führer. Deliver it with my commendation. You've truly outdone yourself, Herr Kissinger. Wunderbar. Yeah, what next? Salute the man of a nation. That's an interesting one. Of course, we cannot proceed without reforming the here if we don't address the most basic of his issues. Whom do we salute? In the later years of the war, as the SS gained power and influence Hitler, the Nazi salute was made mandatory for all enlisted personnel. Even the oldest, most curmudgeonly veteran of the Great War is forced to raise his trembling arm high in praise of an ideology that has destroyed all he fought for. The question is, can we permit this to continue? Despite having placed his trust in us, the Führer watches our every move closely. No less wary than his predecessors of an independently minded army. Continuing the current salute as a small concession might ease his fears. At the same time, it's symbolic of the party's subjugation of the here. Can we allow such an injustice to endure? Ooh. He was hardly expecting this day to come. Since when did the Reich take this direction? And the new Führer, Abel figured. Fighting outwards from the Rhine and towards Germania during the tumultuous Civil War taught him a thing or two of just how things could so quickly change. Now the new order can be just as volatile and prone to collapse as any other country. Though, those things did not concern him tonight, as he waited until the clock would turn to a new day, and then he would begin his preparations. 100 men was perhaps overkill, but it guarded the approach that he was going for. A swarm of trained soldiers surrounding the facility would let them know that it was pointless to put up a fight. It was funny, really, he thought. These same methods he despised were now the methods that he was actually using to make sure no blood would be spilled. Though unlike his superiors, he He made sure to consider the fact that the slaves also deserved this protection. Vasai brought his megaphone near his mouth as he nearly arrived at his destination. It had been an hour since the operation began, so he was sure everything was in place. Thinking otherwise would make him needlessly worried. In front of the large building dominated by lights in action, an armored vehicle bearing the flag of the Reich came driving casually through the checkpoint. Seeing something like this happen at such a late hour rose suspicion. Though the guards made no move as the vehicle stopped in front of a facility, and a man stepped out, dressed in the colors of here and bearing a megaphone in one hand. With a click of a device, it came to life, and Abel took a deep breath. This is Hauptmann Richard Abel of Zahir speaking. To all personnel guarding this facility and to all slaves working in it, this is a declaration of the Reich. The guard seemed confused. As of tonight, this facility belonging to IG Farben has been seized by direct orders of the Führer and will be transferred over to ownership of the government. Any attempt to fire upon the soldiers we have stationed nearby will be seen as an attack upon government troops and will be treated with extreme contempt. The security personnel present and off-duty will be relieved of their work here and are to be escorted of the building effective immediately. He gave a short pause to see how they would react. Upon seeing the guards freeze up and understand the message, Abel continued. That is all. The light crackling static of the megaphone abruptly ended when he shut it off. His job here was done. That night, no shots were fired. Yeah, so much for, Ooh. Antonin Grisvax was not fit for this kind of work, forced to stay on his feet for hours, assembling car part after car part, and even sometimes hearing the crack of a whip and a pain yell that would always accompany it shortly afterwards. Life was not easy in Lodz. At least, that's what it used to be called. Now it was called Litzmannstadt, which the 47-year-old man found to be a horrific butchering of one of Poland's cities. Yet he could do nothing about it, only toil and toil until his body gave out. One day, the piercing shriek of the whistle would signify the beginning of their shift was absent, and its steadfast was a deafening, gritty voice that came over the entire factory. In its time of servitude, Antonin had learned German and was practically fluent in it, which made understanding what was being said easy enough. It seemed to be an announcement of some kind as he listened in, the fingers grasping the assembly line tightened. Workers of the Reich, the voice exploded, listen carefully. On the orders of the Führer, today we will begin introducing two things. The first will be an overhaul of the factory. It will chiefly concern an increase in safety protocols, he said, and Antonin cracked a discreet smile. Since when did they care? Some of you will be receiving advanced training regarding new equipment being brought in. Next, you will be working with a few Germans. What? Who have been designated as being highly disciplined, efficient, and with a strong work ethic. As if the monstrous area knew anything other than bloodshed, Antonin thought, a sudden fit of anger overtaking him. It will be in your best interest to cooperate with some, else the punishment for acting out on your beastly instincts will be extreme. That is all. Continue working. As a crackle of the voice faded and the whistle signaled the beginning of the day, Antonin saw several men walk into the building, unmarked. He scowled at himself, but he was no fool. The Germans settled themselves in, but the rest of the day passed with a silence that barely contained the intense murderous aura that surrounded many of the Polish slaves working there. Even Antonin. But he wouldn't succumb. Even the scum-sucking bottom of the barrel life, opportunity would come. For what, he didn't know yet, but he knew he couldn't work himself to death in there. Not yet. The benevolence of Speer reveals itself. Speer had no longer snatched up the ringing phone than the voice of Reinhard Gellen, R&D chief, came blurting out of a speaker amid a burst static. My fear, I must speak with you, he barked. This bill of Herr Kiesinger is... The Führer sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose, feeling a headache coming on already. What about it, Gellen? Legislation isn't your business. What are you bothering me for? Gellen sounded indignant, even angry, even. It's my business for national security. I'm getting tired of the voice. My throat is kind of hurting. I'm gonna chill out on the voice if that's okay with you guys. We can't afford to have our academic base get out of hand. It's a spawning ground for Bolshevism, as I'm sure any seasoned intellectual could tell you. Need I remind you of the dissident groups that have already emerged from the student movement? Do you want a dozen more appearing every few months? Don't be so hyperbolic, Yellen, Speer replied with a roll of the eyes. You want to deny our youth the same education that our rivals enjoy, because you're scared that it might make your job a little harder? You're going to need to come up with a better excuse than that to oppose this. The lion was silent for a moment as Galen composed himself. My Führer, the less a man knows, the more pliable he remains. The world is a dangerous place, too dangerous for us to risk the growth of subversive academia. Bolshevism and its cohorts have always found a home amongst short-sighted young men and women. You must maintain control over our education system at all levels to secure the compliance of future generations. Think on it, my Führer. What the fuck are you talking? Go away. Get out of here. We'll finish up this event, might as well. It was 2 more facilities seized after the first that Abel decided to personally stay inside one of these factories overnight. Before, he couldn't bring himself to do it, but now, after going through the same song and dance 3 more times in a row with Ab's mercenaries, he was to confront his actions and the actions of who he was serving. He'd been in that cold, cold place for so long now that the dawn of a new day began to trickle in, sunlight piercing windows and beaming on barely worked assembly lines and hollow slaves. He should have left an hour ago, he thought. But he didn't. There was no armband, he could tell. Well, one that didn't bear the 6-point star. They were all gone now, and Hauptmann Richard Abel's stomach sunk. The deeds of 20 years ago finally caught up to Europe. And where was he during that long, long time ago? When the world was on fire and he was a match waiting to be lit and thrown in it. He got his opportunity to strike the flame when he, and only he, encountered something that would make or break a soldier under the banner of Aryan superiority. Abel could still remember it, clear as stars in a pitch-black sky, his focus on the real world fading as his mind began to wander. It was a family of 3, a woman and her 2 children, though he hardly remembered what any of them looked like. They lived under the house of a Ukrainian man, right on the Donbass River. He didn't speak Ukrainian, and nor did the man speak German. But something about his desperation when Abel hit the butt of his rifle against the wooden floor caught him off guard. The begging and pleading that still stuck in his mind made him relent. There in the house were no comrades of his back then to just shoot the degenerate Slav. Instead, he was given a choice. Would he do his duty to the Reich? Then he would be congratulated as a Jew hunter. And what if he let them be? Then he would certainly hang as a traitor to the Aryan people. It felt like an eternity before something happened, but eventually, Abel knew the path he would take. Now he stood there, surrounded by cigarette smoke, a veteran fighter of Germany, serving for almost 20 years. Things have changed, oh so much. He wouldn't call his country reborn, no, but the winds of change blew another direction, yet they carried with them the lingering scent of blood. Well, it's not very uplifting, but, I mean, we're playing as Nazi Germany, so if you're expecting uplifting, you're probably a piece of shit. Yeah. That's all the time I have, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching, as always. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of his content, feature, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. For more uploads every weekday, as well as every Saturday. If you have any comments, feedback, anything of the sort, go ahead and leave in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get and appreciate any and all feedback you kind of folks might have for me. If you want to send a few bucks my way, I have a Patreon, I'll link below. You can check that out. We can chat, play games, and just have a fun old time in general. For the Discord. I'm getting tired. My voice kind of hurts. Patreon, Discord, and Twitch. All of those links are down in the description below. I'll make that simpler for me right now. So if you want to check any of that out, do so. And that's about it for now, folks. Thank you as always for watching. My name has been DB333. I'll see you kids next time. Good night.